Good morning. Thank you all for coming today. I want to thank our homeowners, uh, Isabel and Darrell Hamilton, and I also want to thank a number of people who are here today representing the civics of so many of our communities impacted by Sandy. I want to recognize the Baywater Civic Association, Community Board 14, Bell Harbor Property Association, and the Rockaway Development and Revitalization Community Organization, and we will announce others as they come here today. I also want to recognize our Deputy Comptroller for Audit and Investigation, and that's Marjorie Landau, who is the author of this report, along with her very, very incredible hardworking staff in our Department of Audit. I want to announce today that we're releasing our audit of Build It Back, the city's program to help storm victims rebuild their homes after Hurricane Sandy. It's no secret that New York City's response to Sandy was a case study in dysfunction. But today, with this audit, we are revealing new detailed data that helps to define what went wrong and explaining how and why the program failed so many people. But let me just take you through the scope of our work. Our audit examined the Build It Back single-family program, which focused on owner-occupants of properties with 1 to 4 units affected by Sandy from June 1st, 2013 to August 1st, 2014. The findings included testimony from 6 public hearings we held in areas that were hit hardest by the storm: Breezy Point, Coney Island, the Rockaway, Staten Island, Red Hook, and Manhattan. Under Build It Back, the city hired private companies to manage the recovery. First, the city retained Boston Consulting Group to design a relief program. Then the city contracted with Public Financial Management, a firm that had no prior experience with disaster recovery, to be the primary contractor and oversee subcontractors. The audit focused on the 2 major subcontractors. URS Group, Inc. was to provide on-the-ground service to storm victims, ensuring that they had all the information necessary to complete applications for benefits. And Solex was responsible for reviewing these applications and determining if the applicants were eligible for benefits. Nearly 2 years after the storm, only 965 of the more than 20,000 original applicants, or roughly 5%, have seen construction begin at their home, according to the administration. Most unbelievably, the same contractors who bungled the job so badly are still on the job today and still largely unaccountable to the public. So here's what we found. All told, HRO approved $6.8 million in payments to URS and Solex for incomplete and flawed work at a time when 20,000 storm victims were buried in red tape. We found that URS processed more than 5,000 incomplete applications for review, leading to extensive delays in distributing aid. Nearly 59% of the 9,100 applications that URS submitted between July and December 2013 were kicked back for insufficient documentation. Meanwhile, the city paid URS and Solex a whopping $3.3 million for submissions and reviews of incomplete applications, all of which had to be repeated. Now, those payments were made up front, so there was no motivation for either company to ensure prompt follow-up. Many of the cases bounced back and forth between the 2 subcontractors, and applications languished. In addition, we found double billing that was inexcusable. HRO paid PMF almost $250,000 for services which they had already been reimbursed for. Our audit showed that HRO paid the subcontractors $1.2 million for hours that could not be supported by hourly reports, and $74,000 of which was paid for travel expenses that had no documentation. We had no idea where they were going or what they were traveling to. And finally, we found that many of the employees hired by URS to run the Build It Back program were just not qualified for this work. In a survey, 43% of storm victims said that employees couldn't give them basic information about how the program operated, including how to seek benefits and the information needed to complete applications. If the recovery effort was a field day for contractors making money, it was a nightmare for victims. Frequent changes in procedural requirements frustrated storm victims. More than 100 confusing changes to the program and related forms were made in the space of a single year, further increasing getting aid. Now, I will never forget the rage of residents who came to our hearings with bagfuls of documents which they had been forced to submit several times. Incredible as it may seem, the subcontractors who failed to deliver adequate services are continuing to operate the program today. Let me just say that one more time. The subcontractors who failed to deliver the services, they're still in business, even after what we have discovered. When the city terminated PFM's responsibilities in December 2013, it reached informal agreements letting 3 subcontractors, URS, Solex, continue. But these subcontractors don't have direct contracts with the city. Without registered contracts in place, the city has limited leverage over these firms. This means that applicants remain vulnerable to program failures, and the city's potential liability has increased. Without contracts, you can't manage vendors, and there's no accountability. Now, still, through all this, there has been significant improvements in the Build It Back program under the current administration. The de Blasio administration has boosted the efficiency of services on the ground and is processing applications at a faster rate according to our audit. The administration has put in place a single point of contact system to better help applicants. By March of this year, the administration said that 6,200 applicants, or 31% of the original 20,000, had selected the relief they're applying for under the program, ranging from repairs to elevation, rebuilding, reimbursements, or acquisition of their property. So progress is being made, and that's definitely a good thing. But the purpose of an audit is to shine a light on how programs operate, and there are concerns that the administration plans to renew its contract with URS, which currently has an unsatisfactory track record. Our office has made several recommendations, but the single most important is that HRO cannot delegate responsibility for running the Build It Back program to private companies. Protecting residents is local government's chief responsibility. That job must not be handed over to outside companies. And we must never forget that there is a human story behind every statistic. In producing this audit, it was impossible to ignore the anger and frustration of storm victims who came to our public hearings. They had lost everything, and during more than 12 hours of emotional testimony, they shared their disbelief that government had failed them across the board. What happened with Build It Back was a disgrace, and the message we're sending today is that it must not happen again. The sad fact is that these contractors got paid every step of the way. If an application was incomplete, they still got their $250. If an application went from URS to Solex, what happened? They all kept getting paid. Meanwhile, everybody in the impacted areas languished. I could not understand at the hearings how people could be bringing me boxes of applications and a whole set of documents, only to tell us time and time again that their application never seemed to be complete. We didn't know why this was happening, but we now know why. There was no motivation to clean this up, because every step of the way, the contractors were getting paid no matter what happened. So there was no check on the contractors, and there was no standard by which you get paid. I am very concerned that as we speak here today, there are no formal contracts with these subcontractors. So I can't tell you today how they're getting paid, what they're getting paid, what's happening at this point, because we've yet to see the contracts. And that's something that we're going to work towards in the coming weeks and months ahead.